into it. Sometimes there's not that many. It depends how generous Facebook is.
All good. Facebook is, it's a unique platform.
Yeah,
some people will interact, and then others will, because some people will see it and others won't. And
well, but then also there's censorship. They love to just like the minute you mention live or anything like that, everything on your news feed just disappears. Like, they've got it down to a fine art.
I suspect they probably prioritize stuff that's paid rather than stuff that's not.
Probably too, yeah. Just going to see here. I thought I got a notification. That wasn't it. Yeah. From Facebook, it said effective October 1st, 2020, Section 3.2 of our terms and services will be updated to include we also can remove or restrict access to your content, services, or information if we determine that doing so is reasonably necessary to avoid or mitigate adverse legal or regulatory impacts to Facebook.
Yeah, mate, that's a response to the government clamping down on there. I would say I think it's an abuse of power from the big tech guys. That's what the government is trying to counteract. But I mean,
and a privately owned thing too, isn't it? Like that, there's only so much that they can do being privately owned. They've got to sort of just, like, you can't bulge into a business and tell them how to run their business, and so it's sort of the same with Facebook in a way, I guess. But
yeah, fair point. But I think that at the same time, these guys have no regulation whatsoever, really. And they're multinational companies.
Yeah.
And they are in essence, they are globalist companies. If they're going to undermine democracies and interfere in governments, whether subversively or whatever, by promoting some content and not others, or censoring some content and not others, something has to be done, because we're in new territory, I guess, with this social media stuff. A lot of people are. There's still people who don't really know how to use it properly. You see. I've got relatives that get on there and say, it's like, oh, cringe. Just think about what you're saying, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's I think it's like I said, new territory, and
Yeah. All right, we'll kick off because we've got a few watching there. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hope you're well wherever you are. I have a guest with me this evening, Rod Lampard. He's a contributor to Caldron Pool. It almost seems like a little bit of a Caldron Pool club because I've had quite a few of you guys on. But it's hard to get conservative-minded people, like especially men who are speaking up. It's hard to get people organised to come on. So I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, cool. Make sure you guys comment. Let us know that you're there, you're watching. Any comments and questions you have for either Rod or myself, make sure you fire them up there. We'll try and get to them. Also, we'll be going every Tuesday night at 7:30. It was 7 o'clock was just far too early. I think we were missing a lot of people because I know myself, you're trying to get kids into bed and fed and all those sorts of things. So I've just pushed it back half an hour. So every Tuesday night, 7:30. So we appreciate you joining us. Tonight, we're going to be throwing up a video. We've just been talking about people who don't really understand technology real great. I'm going to give this a go. I've got to share the screen so that I can play a video. So there was a video, and Rod, maybe before we go to it, you can shed a bit more light on it, but there was a video made by Caldron Pool's Ben Davis. He's an Aussie, and this video has gone viral. It's all the Democrats and Democratic elite, wouldn't you really? Because it's a video.
I think the leading Democrats and outspoken leftists who have, for 4 years just thrown rhetoric around violence and hate, and you have that whole anti-Trump stuff. And now they're shifting the blame to Donald Trump, saying it's his fault. I mean, you saw the guy from Portland, right? The mayor, I think Ted Wheeler, his name is, has crazy stuff. He's out there actually from a written script. He's saying that Donald Trump is the cause of this violence, and now he wants me to clean it up. And when you look at that video, you can see evidence from him. It's not doctored, it's not manipulated whatsoever, and it's not out of context really either. Because if you have seen these videos in their entirety, it fits the modus operandi, right? The way that they operate in that anti-Trump bubble. So yeah, it's definitely striking. I think it's punchy, and that's probably why it's been shared so much, because it counters this new narrative from the left that says that Donald Trump is the reason for the violence in the division. Now, in my opinion, Trump is not a great communicator, but he seems to be a good leader in that sense. He a good manager behind the scenes. When you go to any retail store, a manager could be really good behind the scenes, getting all stuff done, facilitating, but you get them up in front of people, they're not so good, right? There's going to be issues. So as far as that goes, I mean, as my wife would tell me that in a workplace, there's all these people who love Obama and think he was so great, and how he should come back and all this stuff. And I think, well, if you want an orator who's going to give you flowery speeches, then fair enough. But if you want someone who's actually going to solve problems and deal with community issues and counter a lot of the ideology that's being thrown around, and even those flowery speeches, deception and all that kind of stuff that flows in them and feeds them, then I guess Donald Trump's the man. He's the one that's going to deal with it, and he's probably proven that. And you see that in the black community in America. There's a lot of support for him. I even shared one of those videos today to Facebook. To say that he is the cause of this violence in this division is just nuts. It really is. And not only that, but it shows contempt from a bureaucratic political class for the citizens of the country, the people they're elected to represent. There's this contempt for them, this hate, I guess, in some respects. I would call it a quiet contempt. And you have in retail, sometimes you'll have quiet contempt for customers, and you've got other things you've got to get done in retail. You get shelves stocked and all this stuff. And you're always getting customers coming up and you've got to do this and do that. And then there's this frustration that feels from that. But I think in politics, it's a little different, not the same, but a little different. And that quiet contempt comes in where, we know what's best for you. We will give you what we think is best for you, rather than actually listening and sitting down and dealing with the issues. And I think that's where the Morrison government has probably succeeded to some degree, is that he hasn't necessarily entertained narratives or played political games. He's done the best to just get the job done. And I think he's probably failed a bit with the COVID-19 lockdown stuff, especially in handling Daniel Andrews. You gave him too much leash, rope, if you like. Leash is probably not the right way to say it. You gave him too much rope, I think, with that because of his cabinet. It's just too much, I reckon. And when you're talking about totalitarian measurements or rules and laws to try and combat this virus, there's a line between fighting the people and fighting the virus. And I think with Victoria in particular, that line has been crossed. And, again, just coming back to Donald Trump and the left and these other issues, I think it all ties in. Is this momentum across the world against anything that speaks truth to falsehood, anything that steps in and says, we're going to get this job done. No, you can't get this job done because it doesn't support our narrative, it doesn't support our ideology, or it doesn't benefit our particular goals for the world in some particular way. And I think that video, in sense, sort of exemplifies that.
Yeah, just jump back for a sec. Interesting you brought up Obama, and I watched a few speeches with Obama, and he was a very well-spoken, smooth-spoken, could really string words together, and quite clever at that part of things. But it doesn't mean that, like you say, behind the scenes he's actually getting stuff done. And quite often men, in particular, like I would say myself, if I talk about myself for a second, when I want to get something across, I usually use the least amount. I am a yap, but I use the least amount of words as possible, fairly direct, and then you get on with it. It's a very feminine thing to be able to string these massive long speeches together and sound very nice and very eloquent. But it doesn't mean that they're getting the job done behind the scenes. And he's been brutalised by the way that he talks, like how he talks and those sorts of things. But there's been no mention of the fact that he's, like they pick on him the way he talks, and he's just very direct, and he might be quite abrupt, and he might be almost like he's been accused of making fun of disabled people and all those sorts of things, because it just comes out. It's quite real, and I fail to see the problem with realness like that. Rather, and people know that those speeches that Obama read were all written down and
polished. Yeah, they're polished.
You see Trump, and he stands up and he goes, "Oh, yep, so this, that, and the other." Why are people so offended by realness? It's quite bizarre, even though people know in the back of their mind these others have always had this speech written down in front of them.
I think that the appearance sells, and today you have a lot of stock in appearance over reputation, character over reputation, appearance over substance, that kind of stuff. It goes back to Machiavelli, I think. And Machiavelli in the 16th century, he said that as long as it appears to be the case, people will respect you. People will hold you up. And anybody who knows you behind the scenes, it will not speak up against you, because the majority will stop you. The majority will censor you. And I think that's not just, a thing that's just new to politics in the world. I think it's something that's been around for a very long time. And, I think it's a sin issue, really, because of the heart of the human condition. Cut straight to that,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
and that video is I think that video is probably one of the things that really back that up. That they're putting on this tough front. They're creating an enemy because there's no other enemy. There is no enemy. They've got to create it, right? So
yeah. And he's been the perfect one to make it. Yeah. So this video, we'll play it now. It's this morning. It was retweeted or sometime in the last hour, so it's been retweeted by Donald Trump Jr., which is pretty cool. So that would have got some views. We checked Facebook just 2 minutes before we started, and it's had 32,500 views on Facebook, and it's now had 2 million views on Twitter. So well and truly viral. And so we'll just check this technology out now, just to share the screen, and we'll see how this goes. It'll take me a second. It's not going to work for me for some reason. Might end up having to put it in the link. Yeah, I don't know why it's not allowing me to do it.
That's all right. People can go to the Caldron Pool page and see it.
Yeah, I'll try and put a link up, and I'll share the video. I'm pretty sure I'll share the video anyway on the page. But if you want to see some liberals going bananas, I'll just try one more time. Yeah, I don't know why. I'll have to do some further investigation on that one.
All good, mate. All good.
Man, technology.
Yeah, but like that video itself, I mean, it sort of stems, I think, from a root cause in education. This ideology that stems back to the 60s, and even in the 80s, they tried to call Reagan a warmonger, and yet behind the scenes, he was working in a backdoor diplomacy with the Soviets, and without that, there probably would never have been the progress that we saw in the early 90s with the breakdown of the Soviet Union. I mean, that is a key contributor. Of course, there's the financial factor, economic factor that's in there, but a lot of people sort of focus on the economic factor. They're saying, oh, well, Reagan just made them go bankrupt, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, fair enough, good point, but Reagan was working at relationship building behind the scenes, while the Democrats, Ted Kennedy, for example, was actively trying to undermine his presidency by seeking the support of the Soviets and taking him out. Now, people go, oh, that's not true. That didn't happen. Well, if you check the facts, if you Google it, you look it up, there is in books, it's in references, it's well documented that happened. And how it happened specifically, we're not sure. But again, the left, they do what they do. They'll just say, well, you can't trust the KGB or the Soviets. Okay, we'll dismiss it, all right? That's like saying, well, you can't trust a white man because he's got white skin. But I'm not a racist if I say that to you. hang on a sec, you just said you can't trust me because of the color of my melanin, right? The shade of my melanin. But no, I'm not a racist. You're the racist. And they sort of, melt down. And I think that video and all those clips that Ben has put together there, especially that last bit where he, captures the shooting of Aaron Danielson. Man, it's horrifying to watch. Really, it's not something we're celebrating. It's something we're trying to make aware to the public and say, hang on a sec, there's an inconsistency. They're lying to you, openly lying to you about what's actually going on.
Yeah, no, it's quite amazing that, and the fact that it just somehow people, even like, and it is in your face anyway. Like, it's not like it's hidden from us, but people are blind to it in a way, aren't they? Like, unless you put it in something like what Ben did, it sort of just blows over most people, doesn't it?
Well, the video is going to capture more attention than an article is, right? And you can sit down and write. You can sit down and write a 1,000-word, well-referenced article. It'll be ignored, and you could link that article to people who say that's all fake. It's crap. It's just propaganda, right-wing propaganda, et cetera, et cetera. You could link the article to them. They would still argue that it's right-wing propaganda, even though you've got factual, references, things that back up these statements and these arguments, these evidence-based reasoning that we're putting forward. You just can't argue against the emotional reasoning in that respect, which is thrown forward in those debates, in those arguments. You see it on Twitter all the time with anonymous, responses. I get it in comments. So I had probably 2 or 3 times I've blocked people because it just gets to the point where you're not really now in a conversation, or even an argument. You've got someone who wants to fight with you and do harm to you. They want to, get inside your head and manipulate, all that kind of stuff. There's a time for that. It's good crazy makers. They do that to manipulate a response so that you would take debate. There's this famous, if you YouTube it, you can YouTube it. It's a really good example of what I mean. William F. Buckley Jr. was a conservative speaker in the US, and he went up against Gore Vidal, who was a open leftist and homosexual, and he did a series of debates with him in presidential election. Right at one of the last ones, Vidal very carefully planned this. He preempted it. It was prepared beforehand, and he very carefully maneuvered his way in that debate to get William F. Buckley to respond in a way that would cause Buckley to lose the debate. And how he did that was by calling him a crypto-Nazi. And every time he called him a crypto-Nazi, Buckley would, it would rile Buckley up. He would just trigger his emotions. And it was a manipulative strategy designed to get Buckley to step on Vidal's landmine. And that's what I've said consistently to friends and to Facebook and the people who read my stuff, that we have to be very careful we don't tread on the left's landmines, because there are people out there in the radical left in particular who are setting these things up in order to bait and trap people. I guess Kyle Rittenhouse could be an example of that. I mean, it seems like he was defending himself. It's an investigation that's underway in the US, but he killed two guys, I think, and wounded one in that protest, and he has a clear case for self-defense. But at the same time, what was he there for? I mean, come on, you've got to be smarter than this. I mean, we've got to be a little bit more careful with how we handle ourselves in these debates and this conflict, because ultimately, this battle isn't about left versus right, black versus white. It's about truth versus falsehood. And that, I think, for Christians in the media in particular, has to be where we come from and where we stand. And that has to be the hill that we die on, basically. Not this, not to be carried away with these narratives of systemic racism and that's really born from, I believe, a toxic ideology such as intersectionality and critical race theory, those kinds of things that divide and create a culture of suspicion. It's just that sort of stuff. So when it comes back to the video and then the guy's talking about Trump, it's his fault, the rhetoric. No, it's actually been something that's been building for a very long time. And it's been something the left have been pushing and pushing and pushing. In fact, they're probably, it would be it's surprising that those on the right haven't really jumped up, and reacted in the same way. I think that the conservatives and non-leftists have shown a great deal of restraint in the last 4 years. Sure, there's been crossfire as far as rhetoric and words go, and there's equally extremists on both sides. But for the most part, I think that the conservatives have shown a great deal of restraint, especially since they have power in Australia. Well, I'm not sure Morrison's a genuine conservative, but that's debatable. But yeah, just as a whole, if we run with the idea that he's a conservative, Boris Johnson, and then you've got Donald Trump. I mean, it could do a lot more if they were what the left calls them. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah. I've been a bit disappointed probably with Scott Morrison. Just you look at Donald Trump, and okay, so sometimes he doesn't make the best decisions every time. Actually, just a comment just popped up there, Evelyn. So I'm having a little bit of trouble since I tried to share that. The screen's playing up, but we're still live, so we'll keep on with it. But too much restraint, Evelyn said, which is very true. Like you see that with Morrison, he just very reserved, trying to sort of keep everybody happy. Donald Trump, he makes decisions. Even if he makes a bit of a blue, then he works hard to fix it. He backs himself. And we don't see that in Australia, I talked about it last week in my live stream just when I was on my own, but all these school sexual programs that they've got going on, where is he? Like, he's meant to be a Christian, a supposed Christian. Where is he? Like, he's meant to be leading the country. I would expect that he would be a little bit more vocal and say, I don't think that's where Australians, and there's no parents that are wanting this stuff. But we just that really strong leadership that you see from Donald Trump, we don't seem to have it with Scott Morrison. It's just not the same.
I think there's a good reason for that. He's not Donald Trump to start with, and he's far too polished, too much part of the Canberra mob. He knows how to play the Canberra tune. He knows how to play it, and that means he's limited by playground rules. And that is set by the members of the Canberra Swamp,
Yeah.
But like Trump, as I said, he at least wants to get the job done and move forward with that. As far as the restraint stuff goes, too much restraint. I think there's an apathy, and then there's holding back and waiting, and just trying to be the better alternative rather than stepping onto those landmines that I mentioned before. So, everyone's all right. I mean, there is a lot of restraint that people are silent. So I guess in that respect, there's too many people who are silent where they should be speaking up. But, you have Christian leaders, for example, who are promoting stuff that, is like in the name of tolerance and equality and academic rigor, that it just raises your eyebrow and says, what the heck, come on. I mean, you've got to lead from the front here. You've got to step up and take the mantle. And it's just, and then I'll say, well, it's, you could bring like, say, a right-wing conservative book to the table and they would reject it. Well, hang on, if we're talking about academic rigor here, why are you rejecting that, but it's okay with this one? I've been in academic forums and stuff where they've done that. They're like, well, that's not approved. That's not approved. We won't approve that. But you just said we're reading this because of academic rigor and fairness and inclusion. There's a double standard, I think, that plays into that, and that's part of that a new political culture that really isn't new, so to speak. It's more that Machiavellian thing I talked about, which is appearances. As long as they're feeding the appearance to the left, for example, that they're being kind, loving, but it's nice, I guess. Jesus is a nice guy, and they reduce that to that sort of level, an ethic of niceness. We end up with one group dominating the other because far too many have remained silent when they should have spoken up. And you have echoes to Germany in 1930s, which is, I wouldn't say it's exactly like where we're at right now, but prior to Donald Trump being elected, it certainly looked that way. You have a lot of groupthink, a lot of herd mentality. You can't disagree with the consensus of the majority. You've got to feed on the narrative that's being fed to you. Stuff like that.
Yeah, which I think Morrison is good at. Like he's probably it's probably a survival thing more than anything. Would it? Do you think? Like
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's political,
and it's a pretty easy position to sit in. Like it's while everybody else is sort of starting to get stirred up and do some hard work, you sit quietly. I think that's a real
look at how easy he sails past any connection with Donald Trump. He distanced himself from Israel Folau. He distances himself from Donald Trump. And why does he do that? He does that because the left are effective in pushing their narrative on the people.
Yeah,
they can create an image of somebody, and people will be won over by it. And if you disagree with that, then you're unintelligent, you're a bigot or whatever. You see that with Fraser Anning. Fraser Anning being a great example. I mean, he used the word solution in a speech, and suddenly he's like, he's talking about killing people and genocide and stuff. The media really swung that because they didn't like him. They didn't like what he had to say. Why? Because he's not a leftist, because he's challenging the norm. I mean, Pauline Hanson's another one. She's not a great communicator, but she's doing her job. She wants to get the job done. She's passionate about her country, passionate about the people of this country. She wants to get the job done. It's not that
all the people,
and they're not feeding off this us versus them cognitive distortion, which tends to be what you get from leftists, the radical left and things like that.
With Trump, though, he has taken that to task like that. Like it almost feels like he's battling with everybody at times. But that narrative that the media have pushed and tried to twist and tried to lay him down and run the bus over him. Basically, he has taken that to task and said, no, that's not happening. We're going to, the media especially. I mean, he slaughters the media. CNN calling them out and just making people question, what are you sitting in front of and watching? And because so many people that's one bizarre thing to me is people just sit and blindly watch the news and because they've been there for however long and dad watched the news and granddad watched the news that we can trust it. And there's we've got, it's almost blind following of the media. You just got to trust that what they're telling you is right. Whereas he has actually gone out on the attack rather than just be on the defensive all the time. A little bit of attack I don't think hurts it. And it gets your supporters going a little bit too, and they feel like they can stand up because there's a little bit of support there too.
Yeah, well, that's where they get the cult of Trump from, and the sort of personality cult that there is a danger of that raising up around him because of how effective he is in representing the people, not the party or an ideology, but the people. Yeah. I mean, this guy's been in politics for like 4 years, but he's had an interest in politics for quite some time. If you go through some of the YouTube videos, you see these guys on the left who are condemning him now. We're friends with him. They even encouraged him to get into politics. It's just you didn't pick the right side. Well, you didn't pick the left side, right? So, I mean, again, you have this kind of, I hate to say double standard again, it's a little more cliche now, but you have this, it's like I think with the left, coming back to the idea of the narrative, controlling the narrative, look at racism as an example, a mythos of systemic racism. And I'm not just saying that because, I'm white. I'm saying that because I've actually studied, listened to a lot of guys who, not white, and they've given their opinion, so looked at it themselves and gone through it. They're not just regurgitating material that they found on a meme somewhere on social media, or a 3-minute soundbite that's being cut from some speech that was given, talking about issues in the United States or even in Australia about Indigenous communities. They tend to manufacture a crisis or exaggerate a problem if they can find one, and I think they're trying to do that with Donald Trump. They try to do it with Scott Morrison, but he is very clever in being able to maneuver around that, and partly that's because of his silence, which doesn't look good for him. From guys like us who go, that's a bit weak. Come on, man, get some backbone, stand up, like he should have done with Israel Folau, for example. Stop kowtowing to the elites in the inner city, inner Sydney, or any inner cities.
Yeah, the electorate.
Yeah. Look at Nick Sandman, for example, the Covington school kids, and that is now a proven fact that they constructed a narrative or tried to construct a narrative to attack these guys and push some kind of idea connecting the Make America Great Again with racism. They're just so sold on that, and it is what you call manipulative propaganda. It's designed to change people's emotions and to get them to think the way that they want you to think, rather than questioning those kinds of things. Yeah. So as I said before, they create an enemy in order for there to be one. And I think that's where we have to be careful, and that's the importance of places like Caldron Pool, where we can express, the truth, try to find the truth, dig for it, and give references to those things, and give a perspective that's not that polished 3-second or 3-second soundbite or 3-minute, news bulletin on the TV.
Yeah, it almost seems like sometimes like they're that so out to get him that's like they're walking through a china shop or something like that and tip the plates over, and then go, Trump did it, like little, or draw on the walls like a little kid does, and then go, the dog did it, just this continual need to make him the bad guy. And the scary thing is people lap it up. I shared a thing through the week that a post about Ardern, New Zealand's Prime Minister.
The princess of niceness.
Yeah.
I don't remember what they actually call it. It's like
I call horse face because that's what she looks like. And then there was one of Trump below that, and the amount of people that said, "Oh, I'd take her over Trump any day because she's done this and she's done that, and he's done this and he's done," like all the negatives. And it's quite amazing. Like when he came into office, ISIS was out of control. He's wiped them. Like I would say they'll always be there, but he's really tidied them up where they're not an issue. And it's probably just as well. You imagine if we had a leftist leader now, where ISIS would be, as well as they'd have COVID, like what they'd be dealing with would be incredible.
Well, you don't need ISIS, mate. You've got Antifa and the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, they're all saying death to America, right? So.
Yeah. One question I had on that, and I'd be interested to know what you thought, but Trump, I think they did classify Antifa as a terrorist organisation, but they haven't yet been treating them like one. Is there any reason you think why they're not? Like I found that kind of frustrating that, you see, Donald Trump's calling them a terrorist organisation, and you think, good, they're going to hook into these grubs now and it's going to finally be sorted out. But I think precedent. If you can, they're in power now, but they might not be in November, and if they do this, there's not enough really to substantiate calling them that. I mean, I think now after Aaron Danielson, I think there's going to be serious repercussions for that, especially legally on Antifa. But Antifa is a coordinated group, but it's not as coordinated as Black Lives Matter. So it's loose. It's kind of a loose organization. So you don't really have a head. So it's very hard to, I suspect, that's what it is.
Bring it into line,
Yeah.
The other thing is precedent. I mean, do we really want to be going around saying, this group is an extremist group, we must lock them up? Because what's going to happen next is the Christian baker down the road, lock him up because he won't bake a gay cake.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's just, I won't use it. It's not a slippery slope argument. It's just a fact. Consequences come from these things, and they have ripple effects to these decisions. So I suspect that it's smart politics. I think it's humble to do that, to really wait until there is. I mean, it's sad because what could happen if someone, I mean, we've already seen that with Aaron Danielson. If it's proven that the Antifa supporter did execute him, then there's ways to go on with that, I guess. But someone had to die before those Antifa were brought into line. But what it comes back to is the responsibility for this violence comes back to the left, and that's what that video we've been talking about is really about. It's saying, hang on a second, you know what? This is Democrat cities, this is Democrat-run areas, and now the Democrats are saying it's not a Democrat problem.
Yeah.
Hang on a sec. They've even refused help from Donald Trump. It was today he was saying, look, minute that Ted Wheeler gives us a call, we'll be there to help you out. We'll fix this up. No, and Ted Wheeler's like, he's written a letter, quite a nasty one, and he's got on, like I said, the scripted sort of talk saying how bad Donald Trump is and how divisive he is the country and how much of a dictator he is. It's really just an ad nauseum. You are what the left says you are sales pitch for Joe Biden. I think that's what we saw with Israel Folau. The media is like, you are what we say you are, and that's it. Do what we tell you to, or else get back in line. And Israel's like, no, stuff that. I'm going to stand on the truth, and I'm going to speak truthfully to the situation. He wasn't abusing anybody, hurting anybody in that respect. Everybody has the freedom to disconnect from Israel on social media, as they do with Donald Trump. They don't have to listen to him.
Yeah, it's quite funny to stay plugged into something that outrages you all the time. I find that with my page, there'll be posts that I put up and you'll have someone it just drives some people just insane. And you think, well, then why are you here? It is a free country. It's not Russia. I haven't forced you with a gun to stay on my page and like the stuff. And I mean, when you get on my page, it says Christian, conservative, gun owner, meat eater. Like, I mean, there's so many people that will see one post and then like a page, but then get so cranky when their views don't align with that page. Well, get on and actually have a look at what they stand for before you just go and click the like button would be a good idea. Like I haven't started to try and fill it with as many likes as I have. Like most of the topics that, I like to talk about and those sorts of things, they're not very popular. They might be held important by some of the silent majority, but they're not popular topics that people want to share because they lose friends and all those sorts of things. But there's this thing of my eyes are going to fall out because I've seen that and you made me look at it kind of thing. And I don't know whether you've seen that English comedian, and he does a thing about being offended. And he says, what happens when you get offended? You don't wake up in the morning with leprosy. And it's so true. You see this stuff and people are so enraged by it, and yet it doesn't really do anything. You still go off to work, and I think it's become so easy to sit on a computer and become enraged too, I think, or seem enraged when it's really maybe not bothering you. And it's bizarre. I might just jump through a few comments here. We've been having a few comments, and I like when people comment, and so I'd like to just read a few. Evelyn says, I almost think it's deliberate that they are doing this. Why would you have Biden as the head of a Democratic Party? True. Sleepy Joe, the man can't think. It's like they want him to lose so that the left are so outraged by Trump winning and it brings on a civil war. Yeah, interesting point. Scary, but interesting.
Yeah, I would say, that's the whole issue of restraint that I was talking about earlier. I think it's going to be harder to stay restrained, and I think it's important to stay restrained because we've got to remember the fight is against truth versus falsehood. As Paul talks about, the battle is against principalities and powers, not flesh and blood, right? There's a biblical truth has to reign here, and truth is, I think, paramount. And what we see, I think, developing or evolving today is part of that whole postmodern rejection of truth or objective truth, and this idea that if I believe something to be true, it is true, and my truth is truth, and your truth is not truth, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, look, there is the truth, and there are two sides to a story, but there's often the truth in the middle of that, and we've got to try and dig for that. And Sometimes you don't have to dig. You just have to look at it and go, hang on a sec, common sense says this.
Yeah.
Like what we're seeing in the US right now, common sense says the rhetoric from the left has been far more vindictive, violent, and threatening than Donald Trump, full stop. I mean, the guy is, he signed a peace treaty between the UAE and Israel.
Yeah.
There was a video, actually, I saw a video today on that. It was quite good. That first flight from Israel to the UAE, flying over Saudi Arabia, they're actually marking that event. And you wouldn't see that on the MSN. Why? Because it makes Donald Trump look good. It makes Israel look good. Hey, we've got to have the narrative. You've got to have the racist, the dictator, the evil. It's got to be, look, it's infuriating to some degree,
Yeah. Another comment, Brad Andrew said Biden is a senile old boss that needs to go to a nursing home.
I'm not actually convinced he is, to be honest. I'm sort of like, I see all those comments. I see the comments, and I go, I'm going to hold back. I think, well, let's look and see what he's probably very smart. He's trying not to be Trump, right? So he's cool, calm, and collected. But yeah, there's certain issues about him, like messing up his words and sentences and things like that. But you got to look at who he's going up against. I mean, if you're going up against Donald Trump, would you be nervous?
Yeah, well, you ought to be.
I'd be nervous. I mean, you got to try and win this. You've been in politics for what 40 years of he's been in politics, right?
Yeah.
This is his hour to shine, man. This is his hour to shine. The pressure's on him, and so he gets behind the spotlight. He's like, making all these fumbles and stumbles, and he's certainly not orating like Obama. And I think Obama's probably sitting back going face palm, like, oh man. Yeah.
Everyone's today someone to go jump. Oh, and then there was that whole thing where he's, I don't know, was it a radio interview or something? And the guy said, "I would love to have you back on. We want to ask you some more questions so we know who to vote for." And he said, "Oh, if you don't know who to vote for between me and Donald Trump, you ain't black." Like, there's that thing that you just go, far out. That bloke cannot be the full quid.
But you know what that does? That reveals, what Jesus said, right? Out of the overflow of the heart and the mouth speaks. And I think that that truth applies to this.
Yeah.
You see the sense of entitlement that the Democrats have over the black community. It's a hold, a power hold. You are ours. You belong to us. So let's use the word ownership, and let's apply that to slavery and chain to a party. And again, you have the question of the narrative. You've got to question the narrative. You say, okay, well, they're preaching this racism stuff to, the conservatives are racist and Christians, evangelicals are racist, and it's all everywhere. You've got to get woke and et cetera, et cetera. But when we get woke, you get woke looking at the facts. You look at the facts, and the facts, they say this. The Democrats, especially through Biden's comment, strongly suggest that the Democrats have an entitlement or a sense of entitlement over the black community in the United States. And from what I've been reading from black friends online and who live in the United States and sharing their thoughts on things, some great guys, by the way. If you Anthony B. Logan, YouTube, check him out. He's excellent. Daryl Harrison and Virgil Walker do a podcast called Just Thinking. That's awesome as well. Check that out. Go to the horse's mouth. Go to the source. So these guys are, they're in the communities over there. They are talking about the issues. They're not trying to be flamboyant in their speeches. They're not trying to push an ideology. They're just speaking the truth as best they can to power and the lust for power that's over there. And I think when you get to that, you can be well informed with that. You can get to okay, I can see the narrative here. I can see they're trying to push this this myth in order to control, to win over.
Yeah. Just to manage their votes, basically. So I thought I wrote a few things down that a few achievements that I thought. So the ISIS was one of those, and then those two head dudes that got sorted out too. I'm not going to try and even remotely pronounce their names. 150 kilometres of wall done. There's so many people that bring up the wall and go, he's not building the wall. The wall's not getting done. There's nothing getting done about it. But 150 kilometres of wall done. wound back a hell of a lot of regulations. If you listen to a lot of business people, I think, the American version of Shock, we've got Shark Tank here. Can't remember what they call their one in America, but one of the guys, Mr. Wonderful, they call him for whatever reason, but there was an interview with him, and he's a big businessman, and he was saying how much the regulations being wound back were helping him and his companies, and then the staff of those companies was enormous. So it actually, there is stuff that is actually happening. Economy's cranking, even though coronavirus, it's still cracking along. Would have had a bit of a slump, I suppose, but and then he's also doing it for no pay, free.
Yes, that's right. He donates like $400,000, I think. He gets, I think that's a salary, and then he gives that to,
It's
impressive.
He donates it, and like even that on its own, you would think, like I think, far out, like the bloke's doing all that. He's injecting his business knowledge into the country to try and get it running, and everything. He just continually talks about the American people, America. Like non-stop, it is all about the people in America, because he remembers what it is to be a public servant. And a lot of our politicians here in Australia, they have forgotten what it is to be a public servant, I believe. Like they have become either self-servants or servants to the political party anyway, and the game that is politics, rather than actually serve, and right down to even local council, those sorts of things. They've forgotten that they're public servants. They're to serve the public. But for him, he's working as the biggest public servant that America has just about ever had, and yet he's doing it for nothing, no pay. Just donates it to every quarter or whatever it gets paid. He just finds the next best cause that he likes, and he throws the money into it.
I think your point's right. I think you're right there. You saw it today. Was it Keating and Kevin Rudd talking about protecting superannuation? And like these guys are cushy. I assume they've got a pension, right? But they definitely have cushy post-public office benefits. Yep. And they're telling the majority of Australians, you can't have access to your money. What are you talking about? Yeah. They're like, superannuation should be an opt-in, opt-out, option. It shouldn't be something that the government says, we're going to use that to pad a niche financial sector that's going to get rich off your money, but you can't have access to it.
Yeah.
It's insane. And you have these two guys, Keating, the recession we had to have, and Kevin Rudd,
with his $1 million wife, or she's worth
$7. But these guys, as you say, I don't think they have a servant's heart. I don't think they're really out there for servant leadership. I think they're out there for themselves. You see Kevin Rudd trying to lead from behind. You don't see that with Tony Abbott. He's not out there going, look at me, look at me, look at me. Attention. Okay, now you can have my opinion because it's worth it, right? Crazy stuff.
Another guy on YouTube to follow too is Jesse Lee Peterson.
Yes. Yeah, I think I follow him on Twitter, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Black conservative, loves Trump. He actually calls Trump the Great White Hope, which is quite funny. That triggers a lot of people. He has a radio show, and the people that ring in. And but one point that he made was, with the wall, he was very much for the wall, because one thing that was happening was all the illegals coming over the border, and they work far cheaper than, and it's actually affecting the black community first. Is Jesse Peterson's argument is that the cheap labour is coming into these black communities and taking those jobs, working for less, and so that the black community don't get a go. So that's an interesting little twist on that, important.
Well, isn't that the same as the whole defund the police stuff? I mean, you defund the police, who's it going to hit the most? Who's it going to hit the worst? It's the black community in the United States. Look at what was it? Portland? Kenosha. When the police shooting there, I mean, they went and burnt out a heap of buildings, and they affected the black community in a negative way. This is Black Lives Matter retaliating against a shooting. Yep. And without even knowing the details, as everyone's leaping before they look. And I guess that's one of the things about the political culture at the moment, how social media influences that. But we really need to step back and think about this. It's like, if something will happen, I I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, it's the urgency. We probably should write something about that. And then I'll go, oh, Ben's already done it. He's onto it. And I'll sit back and go, okay, there's another thing over here, but we have to wait until all the information becomes available before we write on it, because otherwise we're just going to be jumping the gun, and we'll end up falling on those leftist landmines that they leave lying around in order for us to trip ourselves up.
Well, it's that thing that I heard Denzel Washington talk about, and he said the desire to be first doesn't have to be right; it just has to be first, and that's that media game that you push and push to be first. And I think that's what.
Yeah, exactly right. You've got to be careful with that, and I get it's a lot of people are time poor; they don't have a lot of time to sit down and read a 1,000-word article or whatever. But really, I think if people want to be well informed, they're going to have to sit down and read these articles and read things like that, instead of just going a headline. And it's one of the issues I think with alternative media is that your headline matters, but you've got to be careful with that. You don't want to seem tabloidy and want to take away from the content. And at the same time, you want people to read it. You want people to engage with it. But it can be very difficult because some people, if not most, I really haven't seen any reports or data on this or whatever. And if they even have done a study on it, about how many people actually read articles before they comment on them in social media. I could probably say it'd be in the over 60% of people would comment on an article or like it or respond to it based on the headline rather than actually reading the content. And so they're missing out on a whole lot of context because there's only a certain amount of space you can give to to a headline.
Yeah. Well, listen, we've been going for about 50 minutes now, so we might just have a little shift in subject because we wanted to talk about this was actually your idea, Rod, before that, but Sunday is Father's Day. I think they're one of the most important, well, they are the most important part of a family. I wouldn't say more important than any other, but they are a critical part of a family. And so I thought I'd just shift the gear, not completely out of Trump and into the fatherhood that we want to talk about, but just I wanted to make the point, when you look at Trump and his kids are there, they are not sniveling behind him, rowing their own boat, running their own race. They are there supporting him, sitting and waiting for instruction in what way they can help. And I think that we were talking about this before we came on live, but like just cover it again with everybody. I think that shows a little bit of his leadership behind closed doors, how he must be for them to be as respectful as they are to him, have as much respect as they have for him. And it takes a lot of respect for a child, like for a grown adult child to step in behind their father and do that, I think. What do you think?
Well, I would say, yeah, I'd agree. I mean, especially since some of them come from, broken home. I mean, it's speaking about someone who does come from a hugely dysfunctional family. It's very hard to respect. It was really hard for me to respect my father and even see him in any positive light to some degree, because you had not just his own behavior, but you had people tearing him down in order to raise themselves up as well. He definitely buried himself to some degree in that, but he had issues and he had lots of things he had to work through. But you get someone who's come from a broken home, they're not really that easy to willing to support the parent who perhaps triggered the divorce or something like that. So it is a testimony perhaps to his either two sides to this. It's either a testimony to his character and who he is as a man and a father, or it's his money. Yeah. And they just don't want to be cut out of the will.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that's the leftist kind of like, they'd be like, hey, no, it's all about money. They got to feed the dissonance, right? The narrative. So that would be, but we still have to, even when we're talking about it, I think it's important to recognize that there is a lot of money there, and you probably love your dad real well too and support him if you're going to be cut into that or cut out of it. So, I don't know if that's exactly the case. So saying that's I suspect that they just can't be ruled out, right?
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, I think your point overall, though, I think yes. Like speaking with someone who has come from a broken, even if my father had money, he died in 2015, so there was nothing there. But yeah, even if he had money, it'd be very hard for me to support him and encourage him, and do what Ivanka and others. I think that's how you say it. Is that how you say it? Ivanka. That's yeah. I just don't know how I would probably support that or encourage him in that. The money be damned.
Especially as passionately as they seem to do it, like you say, there is a fair excuse for a fair bit of resentment there. You'd have to be a pretty good actor to do it the way they do it, I think.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they seem to do it really, really well, though. I mean, they know, probably from very young, they know they're going to be center stage at some point. I mean, I don't even know if Trump really thought he was going to be president. I mean, you look at the stuff he tells Letterman in the 80s, he has no intention of ever becoming president of the United States.
Yeah.
But you see, even in that, you see some of his character. You get a glimpse into the man rather than the myth, you know.
Yeah. So, fatherhood. Father's Day Sunday. What does it mean to you?
That's a good question, mate. I've always wrestled with it just because of the issues I've had with my own dad. The sense of fatherlessness, things like that. You really wrestle with the pain and suffering that goes with those kinds of things. And not only that, but a sense of identity, a loss of identity. You don't have that male role model to connect to. And if that, he made some pretty poor decisions in his life. And as I said, though, he had mental issues and things like that compounded a lot of those decisions and things. I think that Father's Day is about cherishing those men in your life who are living out, I guess, the biblical manhood, that are being Christ to their family, and that's the thing that should be celebrated. It's I think more important too today because you have this push to change it from Father's Day to Parent 1 or Parent 2. You just have one Parent Day, Parents Day. So the eradication of fathers and mothers is not far down the track, probably, when you look at trans laws and arbitrary LGBT laws, things like that. People go, oh, no, that's conspiracy talk. That's all garbage. Well, no, it's not. Actually, if you look at the fine print, if you look at the blueprints for society, you see this undermining. And even with Black Lives Matter, I called it a political party on Twitter, and this guy just went off his head. I'm like, I actually screenshot and cut the manifesto, which says this: we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. No mention of fathers in that. Parents, and children are comfortable. No mention of fathers. There's no role for a father in Black Lives Matter dimension. Next part is we foster a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather the belief that all the world are heterosexual unless he or she or they disclose otherwise. And I'm not surprised. I'm surprised they didn't have like that, 63 pronouns in that little sentence. I guess they bring out a room. Yeah.
Not very inclusive.
I think Father's Day is something that needs to be, worship fathers, right? You certainly don't. You worship Father God, right? We direct that attention to Him, and we're grateful for what He's provided for us through male role models and in our lives.
Were you able to forgive your father for the things that he had gotten wrong? Is that something that
it was a process, a real process that took a lot of time. It damaged a lot of relationships. I don't have a lot of connections with half sisters. I'm estranged from my full blood sister. was married 4 times. Hard to sort of work around that, my head around that. But yeah, as far as forgiveness goes, I had to forgive the absence of apology because he never really thought he did anything wrong.
Yeah.
And part of that was from the fact that he came from a place of brokenness himself, and he didn't really have a relationship with his mother, and all this family history that comes into play there. Me to that. Fatherlessness is kind of a theme in my family tree. Researched it and had a look at it. There's a few shotgun weddings in there. My grandfather on my mother's side, he was raised by his grandparents. His father left when he was 4. His mother married I think a CWO. It's a chief warrant officer in the U.S. Navy in 45, and she moved over there with him. And there's this broken kind of family tree history there that it's taken a while for me to process through and just be the change. Not just build a better alternative, but to be the alternative. And the only way that I've been able to do that is through Christ. And the week that he died, he called me up, and I wasn't real sure whether he was telling the truth or not, because it was as he had issues with that. But the tone in his voice, I could hear it. He just cried and said, "I love you, son." He started breaking down over the phone, and I just said, "We've got to go up." So I took my family up there, and he hadn't been real coherent for 2 weeks, but that day that we got there, he was coherent, and we had a conversation, which I considered to be the grace of God. And it's only through the forgiveness, through Christ's forgiveness working through me, that I was able to actually do that. Because the strength, my own strength, there's no way I could have, because it was just so much of a disconnection. Although I tried over a 10-year period to try and connect, it was always difficult and complex. And there's a whole backstory to that I won't get into. But there's never an admittance of wrong. And I think with this fatherhood stuff, and for men in particular, we've got to really be careful of the blame game, and not enter into it. I think that's what big problem with the left is at the moment. It's this blame game. They're shifting the blame, and for fathers and for men leading their families, we just have to acknowledge it if there is wrong, or if there's any kind of harm done. Acknowledge it, get before the cross of Christ, and just repent, and then get up and lead as best we can.
Forgiveness is a really important one. It's something that I talk about a fair bit actually. That forgiveness with a lot of people. Forgiveness isn't for that person. Quite often, the things, and especially parents, and it's something that I'm going to be very aware of with my kids, is teach them to. We're very good at teaching to forgive someone who's done wrong by you and those sorts of things, but forgiving your parents, because they are so close to you, it is such a difficult thing to do. And no one is perfect. My dad wasn't perfect. His dad wasn't perfect. And unless you forgive them, the forgiveness releases you from if we don't forgive, you end up it builds resentment, and you end up following and becoming the thing that you resent. Is the biggest trouble if you haven't forgiven properly. And the most important thing too is that quite often the things that we feel like we need to forgive, sometimes the other person, for lack of a better term, the perpetrator of our desired angle for that forgiveness, they don't even know that what they've done. They don't even know that they've done it, and there is things as humans that we cannot help. There's going to be things that I'm going to do to my kids that I cannot help. They're just ingrained in me, and I might not even realize that I've done them. But it's very important that I teach my kids I need to say to them, if there is things, make sure you forgive me, because it lets them go, it frees them up. And there's so many people who have an enormous amount of resentment against their fathers who have possibly done the wrong thing by their mothers. There's divorced homes where the mother has turned the kids against the father because he left and she had control over the kids. there's all those sorts of things, but there still needs to be that forgiveness, because the forgiveness is for the person who is doing the forgiving, because it releases you from that holding that resentment. It's so important. There's so many people that are affected by that. And the father, we stuff up and we get stuff so wrong. Like, I know that I continually get stuff wrong, and whenever I do know that I get it wrong, I try and ask for forgiveness and remember to ask, realize that I've done it. But it is so important to forgive.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would add on to that, though, that for a lot of people, when you talk about forgiveness, they seem to assume that you're saying forget and just
no.
Let's play happy families again. So if you have like a domestic violence situation, and the wife or the husband go, "Oh, I'm okay now, and it'll never happen again," and we're forgiving and it's just, it ends up being this cycle of abuse that has to be broken at some stage. But the forgiveness is that, as you said, setting free, but that involves setting boundaries and being able to implement that. So you redefine the relationship through forgiveness, and that's why I said, from my own point of view, from my own experience, the only way I could do that was through the forgiveness of Christ working through me. And I just can't explain it any other way. And even with that, there was truth that came through that, and it ruffled feathers with some family members, and you end up in a bit of a solitude, a lonely walk to some degree. But what else can you do? You've got to live, and you've got to move through that suffering and that pain. And if that other person is not going to apologize, even if they don't know what's wrong, but you can't talk to them, there is a point where you have to forgive the absence of apology. And I often tell my kids that pride is the enemy of grace. And I got that from the Desert Forebears. There's some really good books out about those guys. They were crazy, but good kind of crazy. They did some amazing things. But this sense of humility wins. And we homeschool our kids, so it's not something that I try to focus on too much, but I'm constantly aware of my actions and constantly aware of my words, and trying my best to function not just as a father but a teacher as well. And there's an extra responsibility that goes with that. And I think that most fathers have that responsibility, whether they're actually homeschooling their kids in a official homeschool environment or not. They're still teaching their children, and they're either abdicating responsibility for their education of those children through loving their mum and their wife the way that Christ loves the church, and in that sense living out the vocation of a husband and a father, or they're abandoning that to the abyss and letting the rot set in, and we'll reap the consequences of that.
Yeah, generations to come. Yeah. All right. Well, I reckon we've probably gone on long enough. You've probably got things to do, and I can get out of this cold shack.
It's got a fire going, right? You got a fire, yeah. So
I need someone behind me just constantly stoking it up so it stays warm. All right. Well, thanks heaps for joining me tonight, Rod. Really appreciate that.
No worries.
Thanks for everyone who's watched in and joined us. Hope you've enjoyed it as well. And we'll see you next week. Not sure who I'm going to have next week. I did try and have Topher Field this week. He's one of the guys that's sort of semi-leading trying to get some protests going down in Victoria against the lockdowns, and I think he's very, very busy. I just haven't heard from him.
He's probably been arrested, mate.
Possibly. Maybe I should find out if he needs to be bailed out.
Otherwise,
quite an amazing thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. But anyway, well, thank you very much for coming on, Rod. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, mate.